Alright, first speaker, whenever you're ready, we're ready for it. Just signal us so that I count us down, starting by speaking 3, 2, 1, ABC, or whatever order you want to make.
My time begins in 3, 2, 1. My name is Salwa Binashi from the State House Girls High School, and I am here to propose the motion that states, for the purpose of this debate, AI content generation includes AI such as DALL-E, which creates an art from text prompts and ChatGPT, a chatbox or the language model. This house opposes the rise of AI content generation. Now, to shed some light onto this and define some terms. AI refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines that are programmed to think, learn, and problem solve like humans. Content generation refers to the process of creating material or media for a specific purpose, usually to engage, inform, or entertain the audience. AI content generation is the use of AI technologies to automatically create content such as text, images, videos, music, or even code with minimal human intervention. According to Evan Walton Fitzwater, the future of the world is in this room today. Are there humans or AI in this room today? We are mostly humans. On to the first point, ethical issues. Inappropriate, offensive, or morally questionable AI-generated imagery, deepfakes, explicit content, or misleading visual material that could harm individual, groups, or society. According to Dependence Report 2019, deepfake videos accounted for 14% of all online video content using AI manipulation. This number has only grown in years since. Lack of authenticity. The images lack emotional depth. They lack the emotional depth and authenticity that humans generate images often poses, which artists believe bring more meaning to the art. Threats to jobs in creative industries. Such jobs include human writers, journalists, marketers, artists, cooperators, and content creators. These industries are media, advertising, and marketing. We all know because of AI's growing ability to generate text, video, and even music. For example, a very good example is in our own country, Trio Mio, who failed in his KCSE but was a prominent music artist, especially continuing growing. What will happen if we use AI to replace him in the creating music? He will lose his job and he doesn't even have a grade to continue. Quality control and misinformation. AI content generation tools can produce content at an alarming rate, but the quality and accuracy of such content may be compromised. We have misinformation. We all know that sometimes people are catfished online. You start talking with someone on Instagram, and then they send you pictures of someone else or pictures of them but AI generated. What will happen? You will have the wrong picture of someone, and this is a form of misinformation through catfishing. And then there's the loss of the human touch and connection. When art starts, something people like artists, they paint through their own words, they paint through what they feel. What we know is that when AI creates it, it won't have the same human connection, it won't have the same touch that we have as humans, as individuals, or by ourselves. Even writers write according to their experiences, to their feelings. What will happen if the AI replaces them? Yes, they will have feelings, but not as deep and as relatable as our fellow humans. Content quality and diversification. We all know that AI has a specific way in which it creates content. If we stop, was that the time ended? Okay, sorry. Content quality and diversification, and then undermines the value of content creation. It also lacks accountability and transparency because we cannot blame the AI for anything wrong it does. Maybe the programmer, but not the AI itself. And then we have potential propaganda and manipulation, such as in our very own textbooks, The Samaritan, where we see Mayor Morsi complaining that once during his elections, there was rumors of him swallowing a toothpick and dying. Thus, he ended up actually feeling a a bit concerned because he did not know what to do, how to help his situation. That is a lack of accountability and transparency. But this is a potential propaganda and manipulation because that news was spread all around the municipality. What happens if such things happen in our own country? Over-reliance on technology. From what we all know, AI has been used. People who make AI think about it in a certain way that this is... people who make AI think about the way a human mind works. The human mind prefers the lazier way. Thus, AI is helping us to become lazier. What will happen? We will be relying on technology throughout our whole lives. Thank you. That was my time.
We'd like to thank that speaker for that fine speech. We'd like to welcome the first speaker side the opposition to come up and please.
My time may begin in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen present, our opposers in this debate are simply two people with two perfectly functioning healthy eyes, but they are refusing to see. They are refusing to see the future. Kioni Morangugi from the Alliance High School here to firmly and unwaveringly oppose the motion that states that this House opposes the rise of AI content generation. So during the course of my speech, I hope to do a few things. Number one, I'm going to get you all through definition of terms. I'm going to explain and elaborate on the key terms of the motion as pointed out by our side of the House and as understood by our side of the House. Second of all, I'm going to lay down the basis and the foundation for our argument, which I hope will then be expounded upon and will be summarized by my second and third speakers respectively. Next, I'm going to outline the burden of the motion, basically the main clash and the burden of which I hope both of the sides are going to be able to carry in order for us to have a fruitful debate. So moving on to definition of terms. Our side of the House has defined the term rise as to mean a significant increase. So in this case, we're talking about the rise of AI content generation as in a significant increase in the rise of AI content generation. AI, I believe we're all perfectly familiar with the concept of artificial intelligence. Basically, it is a technology that grants machines the ability to have human-like characteristics such as learning, teaching, and acquisition of information. Let's look at what AI content generation entails. It entails images, videos, text that are basically generated by this AI technology in a very short period of time. So moving on to the basis of our motion, but even before we get to that, allow me to allocate the burden. So basically, we believe that this is an analysis motion whereby we are expected to analyze the benefits that come as a result of the AI content generation and tell you why those benefits are more significant and more relevant than the threats. Whereas their side of the House is going to try and convince you, perhaps are going to try and incorrectly convince you why the threats are perhaps greater than the benefits. So let's move on and understand who the actors and the stakeholders of this motion are. The actors and the stakeholders is one, as understood by our side of the House, it is a society at large. Let us analyze what we want, or rather what are the interests of the actors and the stakeholders. All we're looking for is a prospering society. So at the end of the day, we're going to have to gauge between side proposition and side opposition which world gives a better, more prospering society. Our side of the House, by the way, does not deny the existence of threats. We agree that AI poses threats. It reduces human labor. There are infringements on creativity. We agree. But note, this is not due to the rise of AI content generation itself, but rather it speaks to the inadequacy, or rather the relatively new, or the fact that it is a relatively new concept. By this I mean, let's take for example, when the car was invented. When the car was first invented, if you will read your history properly, you're going to find out that there were many car crashes. Why? Rules had not been set in place as to how we are going to use these cars. It's the same for AI today. AI content moderation in itself does not bring these threats. What brings these threats is a lack of regulation and rules placed on the AI content moderation. So let's move on to the main basis of our argument. The main basis of our argument lies in the fact that AI content generation guarantees a prospering economy. Let's look, for example, at the video editing and animation industry. Let's take, for example, my good friend Benny. Benny was a video editor and animation software developer, and for most of his career, he spent it working himself to death simply because he could not keep up with the demands of the companies. Right now, he has been able to incorporates the AI into his work. Thus, he can, instead of taking about 2 weeks to produce one animation, today he can produce 5 animations in 1 day. What does this create? An increase in product. What does an increase in product create? A more sustainable rate of economic growth, which is what we're looking for. Studies, by the way, from the McKinsey Global Institute have shown that by 2030, the AI, just 2030, the AI will have contributed $7 trillion to the global economy. So the AI is going to create new jobs that are going to further our economy, leading, remember what our interests are, a better, more prospering society economically and in other aspects as well. Studies also show that 97 new jobs will have been created, or rather 97 new professions will have been created by the year 2030. Further studies show, I have done my research, don't worry, I got you, that 133 million new jobs will have been created because of AI by 2030. Let's contrast this to the 97 million jobs which AI will have replaced. To me, 133 is a bigger number than 97. That is why we are right. And just to speak to their claim, whereby they say that some human labor is going to be replaced and some jobs are going to be lost, what all this leads to is a diversification of economy. We've seen this every time humans have advanced in terms of technology. When the car was invented, when the light bulb was invented, there were jobs that were lost. But what did this lead to? People are using the skills that they had earlier acquired to get a more diverse economy, and it led at the end of the day to a more prospering economy. AI is cheaper, it is more accessible. Think of that mama mboga who wants to develop a poster for her business and cannot afford to go to a publishing company where she's charged 12,000. Where does she go to? AI. That is why AI leads to a better society. That is why we win. Thank you.
We'd like to thank and excuse our speaker for that fine speech. Thank you very much. With that, welcome the second speakers and proposition.
My time begins in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed judges, my worthy opponents, and my wonderful teammates, Zelda Tichana before you today to strongly propose the motion that has previously been stated. Now, before I begin, I'd like to agree with some of the things they have said. For example, the actors and stakeholders of this motion are society at large. So what should we do? We should bear in mind what is best for the society. I'd also like to oppose a few motions before I expound further and leave the rest to my third speaker. Now, you spoke about our dear friend Benny who has been struggling to keep up with his work. Now, I'd like to pose the question, quality versus quantity. Sure, Benny is able to produce larger amounts of work during a shorter period of time, but the question that I'd like to pose to you and answer is, why is it that Benny is able to cram up so many pieces of information at the same time? The simple reason for this fact is AI lacks critical thinking to verify facts, it lacks critical thinking to interpret complex human experiences, and lacks critical thinking to consider the ethical issues. That is why it is so fast. So yes, we have all the information that you want to crank up, all the products that you want to crank up in large volumes, but what is the quantity? You also spoke about a mama mboga that you can all relate to. Let me give you a quote from our guest speaker, Martha Gomez. When someone from a marginalized community is liberated, hope is given to the marginalized. I hope we can all agree on that. Now, the mama mboga is someone who is marginalized. Where will she get the opportunity? Where will she get the facilities to use the AI? I need you to remember that 2.5 billion people still do not have internet access. That's exclusive of the people who don't have access to technological gadgets such as phones, such as TVs, and so many other factors. So in as much as you want to talk about this mama mboga, why don't we help the mama mboga and us ourselves by giving her the opportunity to get the publications, this poster that she wants to do from us students such as ourselves. I believe that in English we're all taught how to make posters, and to be relatively cheaper for a student to practice something that they've learned and the mama mboga to be helped. It's a win-win situation. Allow me now to begin expounding further. One last thing. We have also come to agree that there are threats posed by AI. And that is something that you have done. So I'd like to task you the burden of proposing ways to fix these problems. Let us proceed. So my wonderful first speaker, Salwa, came here and talked about some issues that I would like to further elaborate on. Now, we talked about the undermining of the value of content creation. We all know that content creation needs a lot of work. So much so, it's becoming a popular industry, such as the rise of YouTube content creators, TikTok content creators. So why is it that it needs to be cranked up? It needs to be cranked up because it requires time, it requires effort, and it requires energy. All these factors are undermined when we start looking at the easier, lazier alternative, which is AI. The time that this person is using to put into their products completely disregarded simply because of the speed at which AI cranks it up. Let me pose a question to the main stakeholders, which is the society at large. How are they supposed to feel when their work, their time, their effort, their blood, their sweat is all disregarded simply because it wasn't fast enough, simply because it wasn't in greater amounts? I think we should just work on our patience and learn to appreciate the little things. Let's move on to the perpetuation of bias, potential propagation and manipulation. As we have come to understand through all the rounds that we have been through, AI works on data that it has been fed. So who exactly is feeding it this data? Remember, the data, we are the source of the data to the AI. The AI will only work with whatever we tell it to work with. So if it's creating content based on biased ideologies, if it is creating content based on a one-sided approach, what is the content that is coming out? There is no way you will plant beans and reap maize. As we're continuously told as students, you reap what you sow. So if you plant biased data into the AI, how exactly is it supposed to bring out something else? We also have lack of accountability and transparency, which is also another thing that we have come across throughout all the debates. Who are we to hold accountable for the type of content that is being produced? Remember the black box effect. That is something we have also continuously come across. AI is developing on its own. The ChatGPT that we have now is not the ChatGPT that we had yesterday. The ChatGPT that we have now is not the first prototype. That is why there are constant updates such as the 3.5 version, the 2.5 version, because it is developing on its own. So who are we to hold accountable if it produces content that it itself has developed? There are so many things that need to be taken into consideration in this motion, and we need to remember, as we have all come to agree, we're doing what is best for the society. So in a bid to help our humanity, why lose it? Thank you very much. That was my time, Zelda Tatiana.
We thank the speaker for the wonderful speech. As a reminder, this is the grand final for the British Open, and the motion for this round reads, this House opposes the rise of AI content creation. This House opposes the rise of AI content generation. And with that, we welcome the second speaker opposition to continue the debate. Thank you.
Elvis Standing from the Alliance High School, here to vehemently oppose the motion that states that this House opposes the rise of AI-generated content. Before I begin, it is pretty ironical that you have been placed on the proposing side, yet the likelihood of your points having come from an AI program are close to 100%. As a second speaker, my major work is to usually come here and expound on what the first speaker has said. However, today things are different. I am coming here in order to rebuttal points, to rebuttal what they have said, because it seems as if they have not understood what our first speaker has come and said. Therefore, let me educate you on what we see and what we think is the correct way to move forward. Therefore, we begin. The first speaker came and started talking about the unethicality of AI, whereby he pointed out, and I quote, the ethical issues that lie with AI are very detrimental to society. I'd like to let you know this. The problem does not lie with AI itself. However, the problem lies with those who are using the AI. The AI itself is not what is majorly producing its own content. However, if you are a person who is ill intentioned, you go and put in a bad prompt to the AI program. I mean, what do you expect? Seriously? You'll get something bad out of it. Therefore, what we are saying is we are advocating for what you call content moderation. If you post something bad using AI, what will be done? Very simple. Content moderation. If you see something bad on the internet, you see something that has been generated by an AI that you don't like, there's a very simple system that has been generated. You simply press on the report button. Who here has not pressed on the report button once? I'm sure we all have. On to the second rebuttal. We have talked about the threat to jobs. The second speaker denied. The second speaker has come and talked about the threat to jobs. You are not listening to our first speaker. And then again, I quote, what did the first speaker come and say? The first speaker came and said that although 97 million jobs are going to be replaced, how many jobs are going to be included? 137 million new jobs. I'm very sure that you can all here do basic mathematics, and as such we understand that 137 is greater than 97. Therefore, we cannot come here and start saying that when AI is used in generating content, we are actually increasing the rate of unemployment. No, we are actually increasing the rate of employment by a very wide margin, by a very large margin. We have an increase in the number of people who are actively participating in the manufacturing of YouTube Shorts as of now. They are using an AI program that is called Creo.ai, and as I stand here, I am a proud user of Creo.ai. See, what Creo.ai simply does, it reduces the polarization that exists in this industry. I post on news content, I post about news content, about what is going on in the world, right? However, I alone cannot keep up with the type of content that is being produced by a channel such as Fox News. Don't worry, if you're a person just like me, Creo AI has you covered. Do you know what you're going to do with Creo AI? Creo AI does automatic editing for your videos. Creo AI is going to enable you to generate content for your videos. It is going to give you a flow of events. Therefore, we find out that a majority of people, even the people who are not completely deciphering, even the people who are completely well able in the manufacturing of content, can simply go to Creo AI, and as such, what do they have, or what do we have as a whole? Increased employment opportunities. Therefore, your second point is null and void. And on to the third point. You talked about the quality of these videos being compromised due to the use of AI. You do not understand the basis at which, or rather the basicness in which the video generation, or rather the content generation lies on. When each and every single one of you goes to a piece of content, the first thing that you must check on, you check on the quality of the content. Therefore, why should I create an AI program that is going to diminish the quality of content? Nobody's going to use it. Is there anybody who's going to use it? No, because the first thing that you check is the quality of the content. If the quality of the content is bad, what do? A very simple thing, it's just called scrolling off, going to another video, and as such, your third point is also null and void. Another thing you came and said, you talked about the reduction of human creativity. That is a completely objective case, whereby I, as a person, choose whether I want my creativity to be reduced. You can choose that you are going to be over-dependent on the AI program, or what you can simply do as a logical human is to sit down and say this. Because I want my creativity to be enhanced, and because I want to be better, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to supplement my content creation with AI. I'm not going to be an over-dependent person, but rather me plus AI produces better opportunities for us. Now, the better AI is better for the learning, and it is better for the demonstration of social cues such and such, on which will be deliberated and expounded upon by my third speaker. Elvis Stanley from the Alliance High School, second speaker. That has been my time. Thank you very much. Here.
We'd like to thank the speaker for that fine speech, and we'd like to welcome the third speaker, side proposition. Okay.
My time begins in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed, good evening. I am Aching Dominica from the State House Girls, here to strongly propose the motion that states that the rise of AI in content generation should be slowed down. Now, I'd like to remind you that we are saying that the rise of AI. We are not saying that AI should be banned in content generation altogether. Now, I want to ask a very important question, and the question is, what is the difference in the effects of how AI is being used now and how it was used then? Well, I will clearly state, not with new matter, but with the matter that has been given to us by my first and my second speaker, erosion of originality and creativity. This is something that we see all the time. People are no longer being creative. For example, I have personally seen that during these debates, research across all schools has been almost similar, if not not the exact same thing. You are saying that you're going to use this AI to supplement. Well, you are not supplementing, that's not what is happening. Can we please use what is happening in the society as of now and not theoretical thoughts? You are saying it is supplementation, but people are using it to replace their minds. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said yesterday in a previous debate, what happened to the days of Galileo Galilei? What happened to the days of Isaac Newton, where we would actually use our minds instead of relying on an algorithm to come up with options for us? Another problem is threat to jobs in creative industry. Here, you said that, first of all, I'd like to correct one of your statistics and also point out that you are very inconsistent in those statistics. You said that the first speaker came and said that 133 jobs are created while 97 million are replaced. In fact, that is wrong. Well, your second speaker didn't say 133, he said 137. The statistic is the other way around, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, 133, 137 does not exist. The statistic says 800 million jobs are replaced and create 97 million more. Meager and in their favor, but still, if you are going to use a point against us, please use the correct statistics. You also said AI is used to engage, inform, and entertain. Why should we give people the wrong information, ladies and gentlemen? I'd like to give you an example, a very big example. Here we have, during the times of the elections, the American elections between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. If I am not mistaken, a lot of us, so that everyone was in favor of Kamala Harris. Everyone expected her to win. Who came out as victor in the end? It was Donald Trump. Now that is information that was spread all around. And you might say, oh, that information was spread by humans. But guess what AI is going to do? Take what humans have said from the internet and spread it even more. So instead of finding a solution for misinformation, we are making it stronger and enabling it even more. Now, you also claim that, another problem is misinformation, I've talked about that, and quality control. You gave us an example of your friend who now has the ability to do a lot of videos, make a lot of videos. I'd like to remind you that there's something so heartfelt, something so human about making something from scratch, from your hands, thinking about it, thinking it through, instead of just putting it in a generator and watching as it comes to life. Ladies and gentlemen, this does not make sense anymore. Why are we not using our brains? We are supposed to be the apex creatures in society, rejected. Why are we not thinking for ourselves? Why are we constantly using AI to make our decisions for us? Now, something else you said is about Crayon AI, about how it edits and about how it edits your videos for you. Well, I'd like to also remind you that it's editing. It is not content creation, but okay, as you please. Another point is over-dependency. I'd like to remind you about that, about your Crayon AI. You're over-dependent on it, and I'd like to ask you, what happens to the people who spend their money and take their time to study both videography and video editing in university? What happens to them? You said you create jobs. What about these people who are specialized in this specific workforces? You're saying it's creating jobs, but for who? What about people who are not skilled where it's creating jobs? What if I don't know how to operate an AI, but I do know how to draw stop motion, how to make stop motion animatics? If you can make that with AI, what am I supposed to do with my life? Go back to school and spend another 100,000 on education? No. Ladies and gentlemen, let us look at the humanitarian value of this debate. Why are we replacing human beings with AI? Why are we not being human? Why are we trying to be something else? This is why I believe that everyone should simply deny this motion and come with us on our side to propose the ban of AI. Thank you.
We'd like to thank the speaker for that fine speech, and we'd like to welcome the third speaker, side opposition. Here.
My time begins in 3, 2, 1. To reiterate onto something that my first speaker has said, The people to my left have two eyes, yet they completely and utterly refuse to see. Jeff Elisama, third speaker side proposition, here to explain to you exactly why their side of the house is completely impractical in its dealings. Let me give a quick history of exactly what has occurred during our side of the debate. My first speaker came up here and mentioned the fact that the actors and stakeholders within this specific system are the society at large, and what they want is holistic societal growth economically, socially, and politically. And then he went ahead and mentioned the fact that this side of the house completely agrees on the threats that you have mentioned. We're not denying them, and I'll expand more on that once I get to the rebuttals. Then he went ahead and used the example of Benny, who works in an animation industry. You went ahead and tried to go ahead and rebut the point, but I'll just try to reiterate my first speaker's point. Benny works in the creative industry. He's an animator that had to work 30 shifts per shift. Okay, 30-hour-long shifts per shift. And because of that, he was quite literally dying. It's not a new phenomenon. Go ahead and check any proper statistics from Japan, and you'll find that at a minimum 5 workers die per day due to overworking. What is our side of the house calling for? Artificial intelligence being integrated into such systems that allow for people such as this not to have to worry about them going to work and to spend 30 hours editing a video when they don't know how to properly edit, but rather having an artificial intelligence system going ahead editing the video for them so that they can actually focus on what they like to do better, which is animation. Also, that goes back to the point where you said that video editing isn't content creation. That makes absolutely no sense. If you could please go ahead and expound a bit more on that. Then, my first speaker also mentioned the fact that even if artificial intelligences do replace human labor, this isn't a new thing. Words by Solomon. There is nothing new under the sun. You could look at the past historical examples, the rise of mechanization, the rise of the agrarian revolution, and the rise of mechanical loom, rise of cars. All of this happened in the exact same context that we're having at this moment, in which a lot of people went ahead and saw these improving technologies. Then they were like, wow, these things are going to go ahead and steal my job from me. What did they do? They didn't sit down and wallow in despair. They adapted. They found ways around the situation, and they found things that they could do about it. They took the knowledge that they had and applied it to different systems, something which your side of the house completely forgets. Human beings have the ability to adapt. Human beings have the ability to adapt. It's what makes us human. My second speaker came up here and rebutted most of your points, and let me read some of them. The problem does not lie within the artificial intelligences, but within the person behind the AI. And back to one of our main points that I'd like to reiterate upon. Our side of the house is calling for stricter regulations on these artificial intelligence systems, because the main problem here isn't the fact that an AI is being used, but rather the fact that a person is going ahead and typing prompts into this AI that causes it to go ahead and, for example, make racist or ethnically sensitive comments. This is not a problem with the artificial intelligence in and of itself, but a problem with the person behind it, which is exactly what our side of the house is advocating for: stricter regulations. My second speaker also spoke on the reductions of polarization within these industries and on the betterment of learning, which I shall expound upon by mentioning the fact that I'm a history student. I want to watch a video on the Mandinka revolution that occurred within the late 1800s to the early 1900s. How exactly am I going to find footage from that area, from that time period? I can't. What do I do? What does my history teacher do? It goes into an AI, goes ahead, gives it a prompt, and is like, hey, could you please assist me with this specific task that I have? I'd like to have a video on this and this specific time period. What does it do? It gives him the information and the content that he'd like to show to us, which is exactly what our side of the house, what's exactly my second speaker meant by the betterment of learning. Now on to rebuttals, which are quite a bit. Most of your points can be summarized into the ethical or moral implications of misinformation, the threat to jobs, the lack of accountability, and yeah, that's pretty much it. All of these can be reported with the simple fact that we are trying to place stricter regulations onto these AI systems that allow for most of these threats, in fact, all of them to be mitigated. The one point of view that falls outside of that is the lack of emotional depth or creativity to these AI systems, which we say is a completely objective situation. Just because you used AI to come up with your points doesn't mean that I did. I went ahead, sat down, thought about my points along with my team, and went ahead and found solutions. What did we do with those solutions? We went ahead to AI, asked it, hey ChatGPT, please support these points with sufficient evidence, something which your side of the house lacks, which I'm going to go ahead and expound upon. My first speaker and the second speaker might have made a slight discrepancy, but allow me to reiterate on the fact that our information and our statistics came from the World Economic Forum, where they mentioned that 133 million newly created roles will have occurred by 2030, as opposed to the around 90 million that will have been displaced. So with that, I'd like to rest my case and summarize the fact that we have given you legs to walk, yet you cut them off on the basis that people might get tripped. We have given you cars to drive, yet you scrap them on the basis that people might drive dangerously. We have given you wings to fly, and yet you go ahead and cut them off based on the fact that quote-unquote people might fly dangerously. What you want is regulation so that you can actually do these things properly. And that was the end of my speech. Hear, hear.
We'd like to thank the speaker for that fine speech. And we've come to the almost end of the debate. We'd like to welcome the opposition reply to finalize the case for opposition.
My time will begin in 3, 2, 1. As always, my name is Kioni Morangugi from Team Opposition, although I'm sure my name never really changes. My job as a reply speaker, I'd like to state, is to analyze the clashes that have taken place over the course of this debate, and through the lens of every single one of those clashes, show you, and everyone why we believe we have won this debate through the lens of those clashes. So let's get into it. The main clashes that have taken place over this debate, as identified by our side of the House, have been 3. Number 1, we've had the clash of quality stroke creativity versus quantity stroke lack of creativity, where we've had this side of the House, that is side proposition, coming and telling us that AI is going to impede on human creativity. But we have rebutted that time and time again. They say that repetition, or rather only mad men repeat themselves over and over again. Why are you making us to be mad? We are not mad men. Why do we have to repeat ourselves for our point to be driven home and for you to understand us? Time and time again, through my second and third speakers, we have come and we have showed you that as an artist, and let me state that I am a musician myself. In fact, I am a pianist and I write musical composition. I do not want AI to impede on my creativity. So what do? I sit down and I write the notes myself. I understand the process myself. I write it down myself. But however, human is to err. I am not perfect. I am not God. I cannot sit down and absolutely get everything right. So what do? I turn to AI, which supplements the process and getting a finer product in the end. You are people with legs to walk, but you refuse to walk. Why are you stuck in the past? Let's move on to the second clash, which was moderation versus free use. They've come here and they've told us that AI generated content can be unethical, it can generate immoral content, it can lead to misinformation. We do not deny that. But let's take a case analysis of whatever has happened over the course of history. Let's look at the invention of the car, as I mentioned during my first speech, but apparently you are not paying attention. When the car was first invented, we'll understand that many crashes occurred during the first few, I think, years or decades after the car was invented. So what did the government do? It had to find a way to minimize the amount of crashes. And that is why we have traffic rules today. AI, or rather widespread use of AI, is a fairly new concept. The government has not even had time for it to sit back, set rules and regulations as to how we are going to regulate the content. So it is a short-term problem, and therefore it is irrelevant and null and void. Let's move on to the third and final clash of this motion, which was the keeping of jobs versus diversification. Whereby you came and you told us that, fine, people are going to lose jobs. We've told you that many more people will gain jobs than lose, but you still insist, fine, let's take you at your best case scenario. People lose jobs. This has happened over the course of human history. To the invention of the cars, invention of the light bulbs. When the light bulb was invented, there were people who used to make lamps, but their work was rendered irrelevant. What did they do? They used their ability to adapt. They were able to adapt their situation and use the skills that they had earlier acquired to transition themselves into another type of profession, and through that they were able to diversify the economy. When they diversified the economy, what did this create? Sustainable economic growth. Going back to my first speech, what did I say? That the actors and stakeholders of this motion are the society at large. What are their interests? What do we want? Sustainable economic growth. We want a prospering society, prospering economy. As I finish up, let me please just say that as I was preparing for this debate, I did not use AI, but I used AI to define my arguments, and that is to show you exactly why we win.
We'd like to thank that speaker for that fine reply speech. Thank you very much for your cooperation, audience. And now we welcome the final speaker of the debate, the reply speaker from side proposition.
So my time begins in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, as promised back before you today is Zelda Sosiana to explain to you why we, Team Proposition, have won the case. Now, I would have liked to begin with a story, but for the sake of time, I'll go on, and if time allows, then I will elaborate further. Allow me to begin with a famous quote from our very own respected judge, Madam Martha Koome. He who alleges fraud must prove it, correct? They have come here with proof of fraud, with fraudulent proof. Come on now. You are here talking about, what is it that the main clash here is the statistic on the WEF forum. I am so sure that the same statistic that we got from the exact same forum says, in fact, that by 2030, 800 million jobs will have been replaced. And only 97 million jobs will have been formed. So who is telling the truth? Who actually used the WEF? Was it me who clearly remembers it? Or these people who are guilty of constantly presenting inconsistent data? So why is it that they have exactly lost this case? They lack the humanitarian aspect. Here they are talking about, oh, it will be better for the people. But what about those people who invest their time, their blood, their sweat, their tears, their hope? What happens to them? You also continuously give us incorrect statistics and you contradict yourselves. Is it 133 million or 137 million? Moreover, you claim that there is nothing new under the sun, yet at the same time you begin to tell us that when the car was first created. Okay, let's talk about when the car was first created. You also went on to tell us that the reason why AI is likely to be facing all these issues is because it is relatively new. It is in that sense, you are inadvertently agreeing with us. Let me tell you why. Let's reread the motion for the sake of our opposers who seem not to understand it. This House opposes the rise of AI content generation. The what? The rise. Not AI in content generation, but the rise. As you have said, AI is relatively new. Therefore, it needs to develop more before it can continuously rise. Moreover, you ignored our points and disregard our points. When we tell you 1, 2, 3, you choose to completely ignore whatever we have said and go on with your argument, which is not only unfair, but it proves you're unwilling to be told the truth. Moreover, your examples are irrelevant and you ignored the burden that I placed upon you. Yes, we agree that there are threats. So tell me, now that AI has risen on our point, we have been able to present points that support the fact that the rise in AI causes detriment. While you have only told us that the use of AI talks about good. So what about their rise? What exactly is the difference between us using it now and when it was less used? You failed to answer that question, therefore you failed to deal with the burden. We, on the other hand, effectively dealt with the burden, proposed possible solutions, and saw from their point of view. It is for these very, very many reasons we, Team Proposition, have won this debate. I would have told you my story, but unfortunately my time is up. So if you're interested, find me aside. It talks about how the original idea blows up the brain because we as humans are so used to artificial intelligence generated things. Thank you so much. That is my time.
We'd like to thank the speaker for that fine speech. I generally would like to appreciate every single speaker within the room. That was a lovely debate that we just had. For us to be able to come up with a poll, the judges will be walking out and deliberating in the next room. So thank you very much for engaging debate.
Thank you so much. My lady, Honorable Chief Justice of Kenya, President of the Supreme Court, the Honorable Judges, and all other invited guests. Good afternoon. My name is Esther Njoroge. I'm the patron debate club. I want to welcome us all to our second edition of the Bush Debate Tournament. And this year, our theme is harnessing artificial intelligence for the transformative impact in health, education, technology, governance, and other contemporary issues. During this debate, we invite conversations that critically look at the impact of artificial intelligence in different sectors. So as the students debate, we are able to develop their public speaking skills, their creative and critical thinking skills. Yeah, so this is our second edition, and this year we have 14 schools. We have 44 debate teams and 36 public speakers.